time here, and that's bringing my agent, Mr. Jesse White, who joins us. What's going on, Jess?
Hey, Lake, how are you doing today?
I'm good. You know, you've been a busy man over the past few weeks, traveling, getting his license and all that good stuff going on. So congratulations to some of those things that you're working on. And,
thank you.
You know, I had to bring you back on because, you know, I want to get your thoughts on Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos' total collapse in the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about National Signing Day today, folks. If you're, you know, a fan of college football that I like myself as well as Jesse, you know, these are the type of days that you look forward to seeing, you know, who are going to be some of the next big names at your schools. But in saying that, Jesse, I kind of have a problem with all the hype that goes around National Signing Day now, just because we're talking about 17-year-olds who haven't even gone to their prom yet in high school, and they're being paraded around now. And let's face it, a lot of networks are making money off these kids.
Oh, absolutely. I just have an issue with the fact that you have these 17-year-old kids and you're making them out to be celebrities. You can't, well, not everyone can, but there are certain people that cannot handle that kind of celebrity status at that young of an age.
Yeah.
And the issue I have is that now they're already put up on this pedestal. This is how they've been treated through high school. Now you're getting these ESPN coverages and, you know, you have your podcast, you're getting interviewed, have all of this going on. What's going to happen when they go off to college? Are they expecting that same kind of treatment? Or at what point does it end? You may wind up with someone that's treated like that from start to finish, and then you wind up having them in the NFL and on their own for the first time without all these people around. And you may have some of these sad stories of people that fall off the deep end. I just think it's setting them up for failure to give them this celebrity status so early on.
Folks, Jesse White, my agent, sports agent, joins us via our Sports Journey Cam. And Jess, let's be upfront about this. You know, you mentioned ESPN. I came from there. You know, I'm currently, employed with CBS, you know, and they're, you know, you go to their website and you see, you know, first thing is, you know, National Signing Day.
Right.
And I understand that it kind of gives fans an idea of the next great. And that's what the society has come down to, is that, you know, we want to make sure that we're in the know all the time. The problem, again, is the NCAA is going through a very precarious time right now where you have student athletes, you know, suing them for, you know, using their rights to make money, different things like that. We remember a whole Johnny Manziel thing over the summer. The problem, again, is, you know, you're doing this before they even become NCAA players, right. And you're making money off of them. I just saw something here in the Washington Post yesterday as far as talking about National Signing Day and the hype that comes with it. And they were talking about an 8th grader from Washington, D.C., who's actually announcing the school that he's going to go to, college, not high school. That, to me, is a little bit of a stretch right there.
Well, how do you even make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first of all, and I don't know the kid, I don't know his family, but I would say shame on the parents, because, you know, one thing that I don't want to do as a father is take my kid's childhood away from her. You know, I want her to not have to feel like she has to rush into this world, because let's face it, you get a chance to feel like you're part of it, and sometimes you wish you could go back to your childhood. Yeah. So, listen, National Signing Day, we'll find out, you know, as the day goes on, you know, where your school will get some of these guys. But let's get into the Super Bowl, you know. Next year, Super Bowl 2015, you know, people are already saying, you know, can Seattle, can Denver, can they get back there? Can San Francisco, can New England, can possibly they get back, you know, to those lofty heights that they all attained at the, you know, during this season? My question to you is, before we get into that, did the league win in this year's Super Bowl because there was no weather factor?
I don't believe so. You still had so many people talking about the Super Bowl's weather. Leading up to it, you normally like people to be talking about the game, talk about, you know, sponsors, talk about the stadium, this, that, the other. When weather becomes a major point of emphasis, and that's what's talked about, that's not really something that I think is good for the league. Even though weather was fine, I don't think that helps the league that was the main point of emphasis instead of individual players, teams, the game. So I don't think they won with that.
It did snow the next day.
Right.
Just what a coincidence, right? It snows the next day, and had that been 24 hours earlier, you're talking about, no visibility, high winds, snow, just basic winter weather in the Northeast. And I think the NFL will probably go back and look at this as a success in a lot of ways. One, if you're looking at their product, their brand, the marketing side of it, you had a game that a lot of people watched. A lot of people watched because you had two great teams playing. A lot of people watched because you had some side stories, a.k.a. Richard Sherman and things of that nature. You had a great, performer performing during the halftime, which is more of a mainstream concert now. You had a guy that crossed both cultures and everything, Bruno Mars. And then more importantly, you're in the biggest market in the country, New York City. So there were a lot of factors that weighed into people going to this game, watching it on TV, just the spectacle that it was. So if you're the NFL brass, Jesse, are you trying to tell me that they're not going to look at this weekend as a huge success for them?
Maybe they'd look at it that way. I think it was an unnecessary and silly risk to take on the part of the NFL because it could have been disastrous. When you weigh the best case scenario against the worst case scenario, it doesn't seem worth it to me to take that chance. And maybe they look at it as a success, but I think that the storylines leading up to the Super Bowl were detracted away from a lot of the storylines that they could have had that could have been better stories leading up to it. It may not appear that way, but I think that they actually hurt themselves a little bit with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the NFL is going to find a way to have another one. Perhaps they could have one right here in D.C. The venue's big enough. I'm not sure if the Beltway really would be able to handle the magnitude of what could go on, as far as, press, as far as, people traveling to the event. There is a subway right there, so it is accessible. I'm not trying to get people's hopes up, but I do think that the Northeast won as a whole. Because I do think for a fact that there was a lot of money generated in New York this weekend, in New Jersey. And the NFL, let's face it, they're a nonprofit, but they're for profit.
Yeah.
And if they can make more money again, who's to say? Do you have one in New England? I don't know if that would be fair. New York, the MetLife Stadium is, one of the newer marvels as far as, newly constructed stadiums, so you could get away with it. FedEx Field, not sure. Gillette, I'm not sure. Maybe the Lincoln, Philadelphia, not sure. But I do know that those stadiums are all accessible to 95, which it would have to be imperative that you had something that's right there, which MetLife was. So, okay. So and getting past all of that, and folks, Jesse White, my agent, joins us right now. You look at the game itself. And I know you all year long, harped on Denver and the fact that they had a great offense and Peyton Manning was going to get this job done this time. Well, they didn't. Their offense was exposed for being a finesse offense. And I think Peyton Manning, the blueprint on Peyton Manning was if you can get some pressure on him, some things, can float up in the air a little bit, not taking anything away from his greatness. My question to you, Jesse, was were you totally surprised by just the sheer dominance of Seattle's defense against this high-powered offense of Denver?
Absolutely. It wouldn't have surprised me if they had slowed it down, maybe 20, 25 points, 8 points. Absolutely. I don't know what it was with this offense. Some of it was, a lot of it, give credit where credit's due, a lot of it was Seattle's defense, and then there were just stupid things that Denver did and killed every drive they had. You have a 3rd and 2, and you get a false start. Now you become obvious passing down, and that secondary just slaughtered the Denver receivers. And the pressure they got up the middle, right into Peyton's face constantly, I was surprised that it was that dominant.
See, that's what surprised me. We had talked about it, that I wasn't sure if Seattle's pass rush would be efficient enough to get to Peyton Manning. I really didn't see that. I knew that they, rotated a lot of guys, so therefore you were going to have fresh guys always, giving 110%. But I just didn't think that they could crack Denver's offensive line, who for most of the year kept him with a clean jersey, Peyton Manning. This game from the very beginning, just looked like Denver was rattled. You can go back to the first play of the game where Peyton Manning changes the play at the line of scrimmage and the offensive line wasn't ready for it. It just appeared to me that, and you look at the overall situation with the game, it seemed to me that Denver from the coaching staff down to the players, they just weren't there, and I had heard, Jesse, that John Fox and John Elway, they made a change in something that, you don't do this, you don't break what works. Well, the day before the Super Bowl, they actually had their guys check out of a hotel and go to another hotel a little bit further away, so basically they can get away from the scene of New Jersey, New York, just the hustle and bustle. Mm-hmm. Well, Pete Carroll didn't do that. He kept his guys doing the same thing they've done all year long. They went through their walkthrough, and then he let his guys do what they needed to do. I don't know if you can say that one outweighed the other, but it did appear to me that Denver, they just didn't have their legs under them. They just looked flat from the very beginning. And I do attribute a lot of that to Seattle's defense and their game plan. But I also just look at what Peyton Manning played like. That looked like an old quarterback with an arm that was tired. That's not what we saw 2 weeks earlier.
No. And I kind of question the coaching. I always hate questioning coaches because the players have to go out and play no matter what's happening. But how one team comes out playing at such a high level and the other team comes out so flat, I don't know where else to look but coaching. I just wonder what happened, how you don't have your guys ready to go. And some of that falls on the player leadership as well.
Yeah. But
you have to come out ready to play in that. You can't coast and expect to be in that game, a quarter or two into it. So I don't know what happened to them, but coaching, leadership, something has to change on that team.
This is the thing. You and I were both critical of John Elway as far as the way he handled Tim Tebow. I still don't forgive him for that. I think that was classless, and I have no problem saying it. The young man took your team on an 8-game winning streak, won a playoff game, by the way, and you did not give them a chance to go further. Listen, I understand the trade-off of Tim Tebow, Peyton Manning. There is no trade. You do that every day. But why not have him be your backup? Why not have him learn from one of the greatest of all time?
Well, the other issue I have with it isn't just that, but it's also that even while Tim Tebow was the quarterback, he wasn't backing him as the quarterback. He was telling the media that they didn't know if they had found their guy.
Right.
And I have issues with that.
Right. I mean, especially if you're winning games. I don't care if you're winning ugly. The bottom line is most teams would if you told any team in the NFL that they would be given an 8-game winning streak for their upcoming season, every coach in the NFL would sign up for that.
Yep.
Not determining how it would end. If you win your first 8 and lose your final 8, bottom line is every coach would sign up for that, and that's what Tebow had done. But again, Denver hasn't gotten it done. I mean, they look great regular season. They shattered offensive records this year, but I think Sunday was a great day for the NFL in a lot of ways. Not just because of the spectacle of everything, but when you just look at X's and O's and you get down to the way the game is played. Football is played at a physical level. Bottom line, the more physical team always wins. Specifically when you have a great defense. And I think a lot of coordinators now have gotten enamored with these high-powered offenses and scoring 30, 40 points a game. But what do you do when you have to come in the playoffs and you're going to play a great defense? How do you solve that riddle? And I think what we saw was with Denver, Jesse, I think we saw that they did not play really great defenses. New England can do some things. San Diego can do some things. Seattle does everything, and they do everything great. And now you got a chance to see what happens when you put a high-powered offense up against a great defense. We saw this with New England a couple years ago when they ran into a buzzsaw in the New York Giants, who had a great pass rush. I think this was a good day for the NFL because I think now it's a copycat league. Now you're going to see coordinators starting to put more emphasis back on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, but is that good for the league? That doesn't seem like that's what the league wants. They make all these rules to help the offense. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they want defense.
Well, I tell you this. What you do is when you sissify the offense so much and they play a defense that can match your speed, they can match your finesse, but more importantly, they can put some pads on you. You're almost failing offenses by putting in these rules because you're taking away from the physicality that they can bring to the table. Look at the 49ers. The 49ers are the only team when it mattered that could challenge Seattle. Mm-hmm. They didn't challenge Seattle with a high-powered offense. No. They challenged them by running the football and playing ball control, field position. That's the only way you're going to beat Seattle. We saw it right here last year, right up close that Redskins came out, and I'll bring this up, probably until I leave this earth. The Redskins came out and they did what? They ran the ball down the throat of Seattle. They go up 14-0, and then they want to get cute and pass the ball. You can't beat this defense like that.
No, not at all. It's a very solid defense, but I will be surprised to make to go ahead and make an all too early Super Bowl pick for next year.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you that.
Out of the NFC, I think Carolina is going to come out of the NFC. They play a similar style. They don't have as good of a defense, but they play a similar style where their defense just swarms you. They have a good offense. They need another receiver to maybe find a premier running back.
And they can get a receiver in this draft. Yep. There's plenty of them out there.
Their running backs are fine, but if they found a premier back, I think that they're a very dangerous team. So I actually like Carolina coming out of the NFC. AFC was so weak this year, in my opinion. When New England, they had a down year, let's be honest, and they were in the AFC title game.
Yeah.
They had no business being there. The AFC was a little weak. I want to stick with Denver.
I'm going to throw a wild card in there. I guess I'll stick
Denver in.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a wild card at you. If you look at the way the game, again, if you go back to any Super Bowl winner over the past few years, they manned up in the Super Bowl. They just turned it into an ugly street fight. That's exactly what Seattle did. That's what the Giants did. Heck, that's what the Saints did when they beat Peyton when he was in Indy. There's a team in the AFC that I think has the blueprint written all over them to be able to do that. And if you look at the way they played and the way they finished the second half of the season this year, I would naturally think it's going to carry over. And they're going to get a nice draft pick on top of that. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that you may be leery of next year because I think that, Tomlin and company started to figure some things out, and they got back to playing Steeler football, running the football, and playing great defense. Maybe the window's closing a little bit on that defense because I know Polamalu and some of those guys will be another year up there in age. But I think that they have the blueprint. They're the closest thing to a Seattle team in the AFC, and I wouldn't be surprised if they take that next step. I do like your assessment of the Carolina Panthers. I think if they can get another, big-time receiver to go along with Steve Smith, who, let's face it, is getting up there and injuries catch up, they're going to be right there. And I think San Francisco is not going to fall off too far either, So it's going to be interesting to see. So a lot of early predictions here with myself. Jesse White joins me. Let's talk about the possible Seattle dynasty. I know you're obviously not sold if you went Carolina just now, but this team is the youngest team to ever win a Super Bowl. How can they not be a prohibitive favorite to go back and repeat next year?
And they very well may be. It's not a slight at Seattle that I'm saying Carolina. That should show you the faith I have in Carolina. Seattle's obviously a stacked team. I don't know about a dynasty, though. I think they may only have a year left because some of these defensive players and even a couple on offense are going to need to be paid soon.
Yeah.
Their contracts are coming up. They're not going to settle for, unfortunately, league the way it is today, you're not going to get players at a low amount like a Richard Sherman that he's going to get paid. And how many of these guys can Seattle pay? So then you start to question, well, Pete Carroll's obviously a great coach. He's succeeded everywhere he's been, so can he hold that team together as they start losing pieces?
Yeah.
NFL, I don't know if you can do that to a certain extent, so I'm not sold on the dynasty. They may win back-to-back. I wouldn't be surprised. But after that, I think that they're going to drop off some.
Well, one of the things that you have to factor into this is that they play in now the best division in football.
Right.
And I think if you look at the Cardinals, just missed the playoffs with 11 wins. The Rams, I think, are going to be much improved next year as well. And they gave all those teams in their division, all they could handle.
Yeah, and I actually had picked them preseason. If you remember, I picked them to be in the playoffs.
Yeah,
so I expect big things out of them.
Yeah, and then you go back with the 49ers. They're not going anywhere. They have a young quarterback as well. So it just appears to me that the gauntlet's going to be coming from that division. It's almost like the old NFC East days where whoever came out of that, more than likely, maybe every now and then you'd have to go through the 49ers, but normally it was one of those teams was going to the Super Bowl.
Right.
That's the way the NFC West is looking right now. But again, there's still a lot of football to be played. I do agree with you, though, that Seattle's going to have to pay guys. They're going to have to make some hard decisions. There'll be some guys that won't be back. I could see maybe the corner Browner, not being back because you have the young kid Maxwell who you can keep cheaper and be able to pay, an Earl Thomas or be able to pay, Richard Sherman or even Cam Chancellor for that matter. So I know Pete Carroll will do everything he in his power to keep his core players together. It's just that team's so young, and then you have a linebacker that most people don't know about wins the MVP of the Super Bowl.
Right.
We all remember Larry Brown and how great game for the Dallas Cowboys when they beat the Steelers in Arizona, and he turned that MVP into making money. Obviously, kind of fell apart after that, as a player, but still. There's going to be money that has to be spent. So you're not sold on the Seattle dynasty. What about the exposure for Richard Sherman? I'm part of the media, and I had a young man on my show last week, Terrence Austin, used to play here in D.C., and he and Richard Sherman grew up together. They actually played against each other. Let me not say grew up together. They're from the same, area, Compton, Long Beach area,
right.
And they played against each other. So they've known each other for over 10 years. And Terrence was telling me the guy's very intelligent. He's a great person, but he's also a guy that knows how to market. And unfortunately, there's a lot of negative marketing that's coming about right now. And I know you said off the record you don't know much about him as a person. You just know
right.
what he's being presented as a player and in the media, and it's not a good look for him.
No.
I think that there's some people out there, Jesse, that are trying to make a story off this guy. I give anybody credit that has graduated from a Stanford. I mean, I don't care.
3.8, I believe.
3.8. This isn't, and for anybody out there that thinks, he's an athlete, he was given something. You don't go to the Dukes, to Georgetowns, to Stanfords of the world as a athlete first. You have to get accepted into the school the same way everyone else does. There is no preferential treatments, and a lot of examples of that are proven. And I can use Georgetown right here. They bring in a big-time transfer from UCLA and Josh Smith, and he's academically ineligible.
Right.
Not NCAA ineligible, Georgetown ineligible, so he's out for the year now. We saw that last year with Greg Whittington. So getting back to Richard Sherman, I just think that there's some people out there that don't want to give him his due because of the antics, and maybe some of that's fair, Jesse.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm kind of along those lines, to be honest. He's a phenomenal player, great top-tier player. Best or top 2 on every list cornerback in the league, fantastic cover skills. But, I'm in a situation, I don't know him personally.
Right.
The only thing I see, as you alluded to, is on what the media puts out. And it doesn't come across very well. It comes across as a very, and not necessarily always bad for an athlete, but very arrogant, very stubborn seeming, and it just comes across wrong when you're talking about other players instead of teams. And there's a lot of issues that I have, but I don't get to know him personally. So, it makes it difficult to understand how a person is as a person. He may be a great guy, and these may be outlying events, but then you have to look at the media as well. You have a young man that you're shoving these cameras in his face every second of every day now, just trying to get a story. And he's going to say what he's thinking, say what he wants to say, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
it's overkill, and I think
right.
the NFL has a problem with the way they're going about this.
Mm-hmm.
For one, you can look at Marshawn Lynch, did not want to speak to the media
no.
and would have been fined had he not. And then you're saying that Richard Sherman's talking too much.
Right.
I mean, there has to be a balance here, and there has to be, make no mistake about it. They sought Richard Sherman out after the San Francisco game.
Yep.
So be careful what you wish for. Listen, I'm in the media, and I know how this game works. I know how, after games being in a locker room, how people run to someone that they know is going to give them something. And it's no coincidence that you turn over your shoulder, left and right shoulder, and you have 30 media people behind you with cameras and microphones. So they're looking for what you're looking for. Again, I think the NFL could do themselves some justice here, and I've said this for a long time. If you're in a locker room after a game, you understand that the quote-unquote superstars won't be in that locker room. They're going to go to a podium to speak,
right,
where the coach does. Well, I've said this. Why not make every player have to do that? Maybe it takes a little longer to get the press conferences over, but if you take them to a podium, you're not having to worry about guys walking by you nude. And I'm saying this, you have women in the locker rooms, and they're seeing some of this stuff, and I don't think that's right. I don't think that they should have to witness that. And some of them may not care, but I just don't think it's a good thing. So there's a lot of things the NFL can do here to protect some of their players from saying things that are going to get them in trouble. Let's be honest. When you put a microphone in someone's face and they're not even off the field,
it's asking for trouble.
They're still
agree
amped up. You know, if you ask them in a locker room where, you know, their faculties aren't all there, because who wants to be, you know, looked at by 30 people and they're naked? I mean, they're little things that people don't think about. So if you get a guy, he's showered, he's dressed, he's presentable, got the earrings in, you know, and they can go to the podium where everyone's waiting for them, now it becomes a little bit more civil. So I just think the NFL can do a better job of protecting their players from getting a bad rap, a la Richard Sherman.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's unfair to put him in that situation, in my opinion. However, you know, he's still young. I bet you 5 years from now, same exact situation, he would handle it differently. But for the time being, they're putting him in a bad situation, but
you're not sold on
it's not
Seattle.
Helping him out.
I don't think you're sold on Seattle anyway, period.
I'm not.
Richard Sherman or Seattle.
Well, I'm sold on Sherman, as a player. But yeah, Seattle as a whole, I'm not completely...
There's something about Pete Carroll that rubs you the wrong way, isn't it?
Going back to college, I'll admit it. Back at USC,
the suspensions and, you know, the guys,
when
you know, testing for substance stuff. I'm talking in Seattle, too. You know, some people said they've been pushing the envelope pretty far there. Heck, Richard Sherman was a guy that appealed last year and won. I mean, Browner, same thing this year. So you start to wonder, you know, hey, are they doing something that other teams aren't? I don't know. But
that's a big part of my hesitations as well.
No Spygate. We're going to have to come up with something out there, Starbucks Gate or something like that, you know, Seattle. Well, look, real quick, we have Jesse White, our agent, Sports Journey, doing some great stuff. He's on with us right now. We've been breaking down National Signing Day, you know, the Super Bowl that they went out as far as, you know, having the cold climate Super Bowl. Also, you know, Seattle Dynasty. I think there's one coming. Jesse doesn't. You know, just broke down Richard Sherman and, you know, is he getting too much exposure? You know, two more things we want to go over before we wrap it up is, you know, Peyton Manning. You know, we spoke about him earlier as far as not getting the job done. But my question is this, you know, at this point in his career, you know, he's gone through a lot of adversity to come back and play probably his best season ever as a pro, but he's 37 years old. Do you truly expect for Peyton Manning to be able to sustain this greatness until he wraps it up? And the question I have is that window closed now for him to get that second Super Bowl? I
do think he's still going to be just fine. He's not going to throw for 5,500 yards and 50 touchdowns. That would be unreal to imagine. But a 4,500 yard season, 40 touchdowns, I fully expect that. He'll drop off some, but I don't see him dropping off just such an astronomical amount. I don't think the window has closed. They need to get a couple pieces on defense. Having Von Miller would have helped in the Super Bowl, but maybe get a piece here and there on the defense. Their offense is relatively intact. Walker's a little older, getting up there, but other than him, the receivers are young.
But do you think there was a blueprint laid out, though? I mean, do you think that Seattle owes Denver for being a finesse offense and a offense that if you have big enough corners that you can get up on guys and jam them at the line, and it throws that whole timing pattern off that they use?
Oh, absolutely it would. However, how many corners are there in the NFL that are 6'3", 6'4", and can run 4.3?
Exactly.
They don't exist.
No, they don't.
They don't exist outside Seattle, I should say. So there may be a blueprint, but good luck following it.
Yeah, and I think by that time, if teams want to literally, duplicate what Seattle's doing, good luck, because they've got a great young defense. That's just mastermind drafting on the part of the brass up in Seattle, who, by the way, at one point used to be here in Washington, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Real quick before we wrap up, the greatest of all time. A lot of people say that Peyton Manning's the GOAT, and I don't mean the GOAT in the proverbial he was a GOAT Sunday.
GOAT is in greatest of all time.
Yeah, we're talking about greatest of all time. I've said this before. I think Peyton Manning is definitely one of the greats of all time. I don't think he is the greatest guy. And I'm going to throw something out at you, Jesse, that may surprise you here. The NFL seems to be the one sport that you can get away with being considered the greatest and not really having a whole lot of hardware. For instance, Adrian Peterson, by a lot of people's standards, is considered the greatest running back of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Never has won a Super Bowl, let alone, I don't know if Adrian Peterson's won a playoff game.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't think so.
You kind of turn a blind eye, though, because it's football.
Right.
You look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning does have a Super Bowl win to his credit, but now he's got 2 Super Bowl losses to his credit. I've always been under the impression that, for me, in order to be great, you do have to have some championships. And I know some people don't think that that's fair, especially to the likes of the Dan Marinos and Dan Fouts and Charles Barkley's, the guys of that nature. But I'll say this. All the guys that I consider to be the greatest at whatever they did, whatever sport they did, not only do they have a championship, Jesse, they have back-to-back championships. And I think that, to me, that's one of the blueprints. Everyone talked about LeBron James. And could he do it? Could he be great? He's got 2 in a row going on 3.
Right.
To me, that puts him in the conversation of Jordan. Kobe Bryant, 2 in a row, 3 in a row at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
Yeah, so that puts him in the conversation with Jordan, who, if you take away the retirement, has 6 in a row. So I just think that Peyton Manning, as great as he is, he has not gotten it done in the playoffs consistently. And he didn't play well Sunday. He threw some bad passes. He threw some ill-advised passes as well. I didn't see the GOAT in front of me. I didn't see that. Yeah.
It's one of those things that I'm really thinking on it at this point. We had talked about before what happens if Manning doesn't win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a spot. It's tough for me to make that call right now because that wasn't what was out there wasn't one player not playing to his potential. That was a whole team.
Oh no, whole organization got done up.
I mean, that was the single worst game I watched all season long, college or professional.
Yeah.
And I watched a lot of Florida State games, so that's saying something. Maybe not that bad, but
he had to come bring that mess up on here.
But I don't know. He had a bad game, but when you look at his numbers, the picks were bad. The one he was getting hit when he threw, granted, you hope your receiver comes back to that ball. Not a lot you can do about that.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, I couldn't tell if it got tipped out of his hand or if he redirected or what that was. We'll chalk that up to a bad throw. Other than those two, though, his numbers weren't bad by any stretch. He had a lot of completions, no dink and dunks, decent completion percentage. I don't know. He's in the top 5. I don't think anyone can dispute that. Where he falls within that top 5 right now, I don't know. Jury's out. I had him number 1 coming into the season.
Mm-hmm. You're starting to waver. That's all I needed.
Yeah. Well, I told you I would. If he didn't win with this team he had this year, I told you I'd reconsider, and I'm still in that process of figuring that out.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at some of the guys that are considered the greatest as far as quarterbacks, Joe Montana, back-to-back Super Bowls. Tom Brady, back-to-back Super Bowls. You go down that list of the greats. Troy Aikman, back-to-back Super Bowls. There's a list of guys. Terry Bradshaw, back-to-back, and these are guys that have hardware. So, again, this is the company of Peyton Manning is trying to surpass to become the greatest. Is he the greatest regular season quarterback of all time? Absolutely. Is he the greatest processor of information by all time? Listen, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm hating on Peyton Manning because I think he is literally one of the best football players, not quarterbacks, football players. He's top 10 football player of all time. Mm-hmm. But to give a guy the title as God, I mean, in his profession, you've got to be flawless. You've got to be Michael Jordan. I mean, you've got to be Wayne Gretzky. You've got to have things about your game that cannot be broken down and dissected. You have to be able to make other guys around you who aren't that good better. And again, I keep saying this. To me, the closest thing we're seeing to that or have seen to that is Brady. And I know you say he hasn't won jack since, Spygate came out. But
this year was impressive.
But it is, again. But he lost to Peyton. Yeah. And people are going to say, and it wasn't even close, Tom Brady didn't play well in that game either. No. So, it's like, who are we looking for? Drew Brees goes to Seattle. We can see holes in certain guys' games. Perhaps it's one of the young guys. I'm impressed right now with Russell Wilson. What he's done in 2 years. Didn't have to do a whole lot. in this game, but
Just does what he needs to.
But you saw him get better as the game went on as well.
Yep.
You know, first half he had some jitters. Second half, this guy was laser sharp. I mean, he was everything that they needed him to do. He did, and to me, it's amazing how these young guys are coming in the league right now and just playing well. And getting back to Peyton, you know, he's one of those guys that did it. He came in the league and played right away. A lot of guys, you know, back when he came in, you may have to wait 2-3 years before you got your opportunity. So for him, he's kind of the blueprint for a lot of things, and that's why you can say he may be the greatest. But I think he missed a golden opportunity here on a grand scale. You know, you beat a Seattle defense and you know shred them up. You know, you pretty much answer all the critics. You get your second Super Bowl. It's in New York. It's in a probably one of the most watched Super Bowls of all time. Now the lasting impression is that Peyton Manning face that I saw a lot of years in Indy when they were playing in New England. The kind of all shucks look. You know, I saw that an awful lot Sunday.
Yeah. Not
the impression you want to go out with if you're Peyton Manning.
Nope, not at all.
Well, look, folks, we wrapped up a lot of stuff on here, and, you know, as always, Jesse came in, knocked it out the park. He's going to be giving us some baseball coverage, you know, coming up, so we're excited about that. You know, he used to bat like 200, but, you know, hey, if you
something like
hey,
that.
Listen, if you bat 250, I've been told that's average, and that's just hitting the ball 2 times out of 10. I mean, hey.
Hey, don't even start with me. You know that's not true.
Hey, this guy was trying to win the cycle. That's what he was, so he's a baseball guy. But, yeah, he'll be giving us some coverage with that. And, as always, you know, making the weekly appearance here on the show, breaking down a whole lot of stuff here on Sports Journey. So, you know, we've changed up a lot of things here. We've got some great remote broadcasts coming up as well. So, as always, folks, all you have to do is go to sportsjourney.com. You can check it out. A lot of this now is on YouTube, you know, live show on YouTube as well. So, remember, go to sportsjourney.com and you can get all the information about myself, Jesse, and all some of the great shows that we have coming up. So, as always, Jesse, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me out, Lake.
All right, folks, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, more right here at Lake Lewis Show.
If you're disabled and unable to work, pay attention to the following message.
If you're one of the millions of Americans who are disabled and unable to work, you may be entitled to disability benefits through Social Security. Receiving benefits is your right if you suffer from a physical or mental disability. Whether you're applying for the first time or you've already been denied, we can help. You'll be matched up with an advocate who will evaluate your situation, handle your application, deal with Social Security for you, and handle all appeals. Best of all, there's no fee until you receive your benefits. To get started, call the number on your screen now. And keep in mind, there are a vast number of conditions that make you eligible for disability benefits and dozens of additions that you may not be aware of. So if you're disabled and unable to work, call the Citizens Disability Helpline today for a free, no-obligation consultation.
Call 1-800-735-0219. Call now.
Imagine with a simple push of a button, you could be on your way to getting firm, sculpted abs and a sexy waistline with the Contour Core Sculpting System. It's the breakthrough technology that requires no machines, no getting on the floor, no stress, and no strain.
Contour.
The Contour is the real deal.
The secret is Contour's exclusive auto-active muscle toning technology, the digital breakthrough that automatically targets all your abdominal muscles, including your upper abs, lower abs, obliques, and even that stubborn lower belly. Thermographic testing proves Contour activates your entire core. The Contour Core Sculpting System comes with a one-size-fits-all Contour Core Belt, electronic controller with custom digital settings, batteries, and a 1-year warranty, plus an instructional guide and sensible eating plan. And it's all yours to try for 30 days for just $14.95. There's never been an easier, more effective way to get great-looking abs. So call and order right now.
Health Insurance Update.
This just in for all uninsured Americans with or without pre-existing conditions. The recent health care bill will not take effect until at least 2014, leaving families and individuals lacking health insurance with no immediate solution to their concerns. Meanwhile, medical problems continue to be the #1 cause of bankruptcies. Here's the good news. A health insurance hotline has been established to provide affordable health insurance for all uninsured Americans, and yes, uninsured Americans with pre-existing conditions. Call the number on your screen now, and in less than 10 minutes, you could receive a choice of affordable plans from the Hotline Network. This is not a discount card. You will have access to doctors, hospitals, dental care, infant care, and emergency services. Call the Health Insurance Hotline now and get you and your family covered today.
Call 800-794-1817. That's 800-794-1817. Call now.
Are you stressed over credit cards and other debts? Maybe through no fault of your own? Imagine how it would feel to have that weight lifted right off your shoulders. Well, here's some good news from America's trusted name in debt relief. Care One providers have already helped over 4.5 million people in debt, and we can help you today. Just call this toll-free number to speak with a friendly representative, and in just minutes, you'll get your free debt relief analysis.
Regardless of your situation, Care One has an option for you.
We are there to help, and we do that in a way that's empathetic and supportive without judging their financial situation.
The credit card companies, I feel, are trying to keep you in debt and trying to keep it so you owe them money forever. And Care One is a good way to get you out of that and get you out of it fast.
A big burden was lifted off of my shoulders.
Care One threw me a lifeline.
Call Care One. They will help you.
Get debt relief from a company you can trust. Just call the toll-free number today.
Debt relief.